This SoonerScoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. There can be only one LASIK center for Sooner Scoop, and that's Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop LASIKs.
Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Big news here on Wednesday morning, afternoon, as we roll into the afternoon hours. Oklahoma has named a general manager, Jim Nagy, from the Senior Bowl here as of late over the last 7 years. I think he's been running it since 2018.
Yep.
We're going to do all of it. We're going to break it all down. We're going to bring Josh McCuistion in to talk about it because this is obviously a kind of a monumental hire. I think that we were all a little bit of, I don't know, like taken aback. Like, holy shit. Oh, you did this?
Yep.
They actually pulled this off? We'll get into that. But first, we want to tell you about Roback. Brand new sponsor here to the SoonerScoop.com studios, as well as SoonerScoop.com in general. There's only one way to describe Roback: best fit, best feel. George and I both know that. Very familiar with the Roback
I've got
community.
a lot of Roback shirts and sweatshirts. You see the hoodie, the Hezzy hoodie right there. I own that in green color, and it's phenomenal.
Roback has released so many items with their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite. They have a bunch of OU stuff, as you see there on the screen in front of you. Roback's everyday shorts and their Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well for a pullover or any of the polos that you may so desire. They are both super comfortable, have an elastic waistband, and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for a new day on the move. So I love wearing them to play golf.
I was about to say, it's great golf wear.
We're getting to that time of the year where we have a little bit of fake spring here in Norman, and it's fantastic. I usually am suited up in some Roback. All you got to do is 20% off for all new customers through the end of the week. Roback, RHOBACK.com. Just go to Roback.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Sooner20, as you see here on the screen behind us. Sooner20, 20% off to anybody that is so inclined. So we're really happy to have Roback with us, and I know that we're both kind of pumped, a little bit giddy about it. That was one that we've been aiming for a long time. So welcome, Roback, and hopefully that you guys out there in YouTube land take advantage of it. Really good deal here as we begin the spring. I know a lot of that stuff is going to be worn here over the next couple of months and here on set with George and I as well. So, all right, let's get into it. Oklahoma, we now bring in Josh McCuistion. We just recorded the unofficial 40 that you can hear on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel in an audio version, but we're going to get on here on YouTube and talk about it because this is a massive deal, George. Something that's kind of come together, at least from what we had known here over the last 24, 48 hours. This is something that Joe Castiglione, Randall Stevenson, Jake Rosenberg, and his group had been working on. This is something that we kind of outlined. They wanted to get something done before the start of spring football began. That's coming up next week on March 6th, the first practice. We'll talk to Brent Venables, a bunch of new guys, including John Mateer, hopefully, possibly, fingers crossed next week. But just overall, Oklahoma has hired Jim Naggie to take over as the Oklahoma football general manager.
Yeah, a huge hire. And, when they went into this search, I know I was trying to dig on, like, who could they go after? I knew they wanted somebody with some NFL experience, whether that was in the scouting realm or as an executive, in terms of handing, the salary cap. Like, what exactly are they looking for? And if you would have told me Jim Nagy was their guy, I would have been surprised because I didn't think that they could pull somebody like that who has held a really high title, running the Senior Bowl and has really turned the Senior Bowl into a monster over the last 7 years in terms of, its viewership, the caliber of players. Obviously, the best players in college football play in the Senior Bowl every single year. And he's done a remarkable job of scouting those top players, getting them to come and play in that game, and then just the connections he has. I mean, you talk about somebody that is so well connected, not only in the NFL, but college football, and how much that's going to help them in the transfer portal and recruiting and all of that. And then you look at his NFL background, which I don't think as many people are familiar with, but 18 years as an NFL scout, time with the Washington Commanders, Seattle Seahawks, New England Patriots, and one other team. Oh, Seattle. Did I say Seattle Seahawks?
Kansas City Chiefs.
The Chiefs. That's right. And so, very well versed in understanding, talent evaluation, roster management, what that looks like for a professional football team. And that's the reality of college football is you need to treat it like a professional football team. And we've heard that from OU now really since December, and mostly in January of, hey, we're going to build an NFL caliber front office for our college football program. And you're seeing that come to fruition. And, this goes back months. Kerry said on the Unofficial 40, but they kind of identified Jim Nagy back in December. And now obviously Jim had to do the Senior Bowl and has a lot going on. And so that maybe slowed the process, but he was somebody that checked kind of all those boxes that they were looking for. And now, and we can get into this at the end of the program, but he's going to build an entire front office. He's going to hire an assistant GM. He's going to hire scouts to help with recruiting, all of those sorts of things. So just a huge, huge day, and just honestly great optics for the university.
No doubt about it. And if you want to hear from Jim Nagy, he is going to be a part of NFL Network's coverage from the Combine on Wednesday night. I believe that starts at 7:30. I can't remember if that was Eastern or Central time zone. But if you're watching the Combine, you probably know what channel it's going to be on the NFL Network, and you probably are more than ready to take in the Combine this season. Obviously, 3 Oklahoma Sooners going to be up there. Danny Sussman, Billy Bowman, Ethan Downs, all up there in Indianapolis. I know somebody that will be watching. And by the way, in the 18 years in the NFL, he worked in those front offices, played for a Super Bowl 6 times, or his teams played for a Super Bowl 6 times, winning the Super Bowl 4 times. I mean, that's a hell of a resume. Somebody I'm sure that will be watching the NFL Combine coming up over the next couple of days from Indianapolis. Josh McCuistion. And Josh, I think that we both had the same reaction when we were apprised of the news that Oklahoma was going to not just target Jim Nagy, but they were going to get him. Holy shit, what a big hire. Just kind of your overall thoughts on that, as well as his connections from a scouting department standpoint and the structure of the front office that Oklahoma is going to build.
Guys, I mean, I won't pretend, and I don't know that I felt that, or that you all felt that differently than I did, but I wasn't in a real positive place about the direction of this thing, like where all this is going. This is kind of a statement of like, okay, other people feel differently about the direction of this. So I think it's a really good statement on both where Oklahoma is perceived nationally, because again, guys, this isn't just a guy, oh yeah, he's Senior Bowl director. He interviewed for an NFL GM job this offseason. Like, this is a guy that is well respected. A lot of people like him, and I think that's worth noting. And then you talk about all of his background, all the connections. I mean, this is a guy that, for those that don't really understand the Senior Bowl, he's running scouts out all over the country. They're reviewing tons of tape. So what Oklahoma is going to ask him to do, like, especially if you're talking about like reviewing the portal, he's been doing it. Like, and he's been doing it to a level that few can compete with that aren't NFL GMs already. So I think that is a really interesting avenue. And then again, you add in just having an eye for talent, having an ability for that talent. When Brent Venables or whoever the coach is that brings a player in for a visit and says, look, this guy's our general manager. He ran the Senior Bowl. He's worked in NFL front offices. He knows everybody in the NFL that you want to know, that you're hoping someday is going to call you and tell you you're going to be our next pick. Like, this is the guy to know, and there's no one else that can match that Rolodex. Now, I mean, I mean that almost without hesitation, because he has worked with all these NFL franchises, working on who they want to see at the Senior Bowl, who the players that they evaluate, like what, having all these kind of behind the scenes conversations. So this is huge. And I think it is a real statement of Oklahoma. It's one thing to talk about, oh, we're going to run this like an NFL model and we're going to do this. This is an NFL model. This is what it looks like. This is the kind of guy you hire to begin to help you with your scouting, your evaluation, your roster development, all those things that you have to do now in college football. This is the kind of guy that can help get you there.
And I think too, it's, and Josh kind of alluded to it, but it's OU also signaling to the fans or national media or whoever, like how much they're invested in turning this thing around. Because, and that's not to say that, I know that they interviewed several NFL executives, people that probably would have been well thought of in the NFL and football community, but to be able to go out and get this big of a name and pay him, near 7 figures from what I understand, and lure him away from a really good thing that he's got going, I think says a lot about, Joe Castiglione, Randall Stevenson, Jake Rosenberg, who helped with the search. Like, this is a monumental hire for them to be able to do that, and especially at a time when it feels like Josh said, we didn't really feel like the direction of the program was going in the right way. To be able to go do this, I think, I don't know, gives you some positive momentum.
It's kind of like they looked in the mirror and reminded themselves who they are to
Right.
a certain extent.
Yeah.
This coming from the press release that Oklahoma put out. Nagy will lead OU's roster management and talent acquisition, including player recruitment, evaluation, retention, compensation as part of his duties. He will also manage the impact of rules governing name, image, likeness, obviously NIL, the transfer portal process, revenue share allocation, scholarship limits, and eligibility requirements. That sounds like a lot, and he's not going to be able to do this just on his own. Pete Nakos from On3, as well as yourself, George, you've done a little bit more reporting just in terms of it is going to look like an NFL front office like we've been talking about, or they're trying to emulate an NFL front office. So you will have an assistant general manager that maybe is a part of just the portal, an assistant general manager that might be just incorporated with what they're doing in high school recruiting.
Yep.
It is going to be interesting, and I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on like how this structure looks. And I think you said it on the podcast and put it perfectly, George. He's going to be given a lot of autonomy as in terms of what he wants to do within this front office structure.
And that's what's really fascinating is, when you talk about, Brent Venables and who does he want to recruit and who does Jim Nagy want to recruit and what do they put, value on, certain positions over other positions. Like that is super fascinating. And I don't know how much we'll find out about that,
Sure.
but like, I think one thing that people should know is that this hire was made not just to pair with Brent Venables, but this is for the long-term future of the program. And what I mean by that is if next season doesn't go the way that Oklahoma wants it to and they feel like they have to move on from Brent Venables, they will. And that doesn't mean they're going to move on from Jim Nagy. Like Jim Nagy is here to stay. And if they were to do that, I would assume Jim Nagy might have the most say in who's the next head football coach at Oklahoma. And that's what's interesting about what is this structure going to look like? Who has say over what? Who has final say on how much money they offer kids? Which kids they go after? And that's what Josh, I think is going to be really interesting, especially in high school recruiting. Is if Jay Valai loves this cornerback, but Jim Nagy or another scout loves this other cornerback, like how do they make those decisions? I think that's going to be really interesting.
I agree. And guys, you also have to think in the NFL, it's very cold, hard facts. Like, okay, this guy fits what we do. He'll be available when we're looking for a corner in the third round. In recruiting, it's not that way. Like, you have to consider the nuance. Like, okay, we love this kid. What are odds of getting him? How do you kind of marry those ideas to, okay, he wants this in NIL, or he wants us, his guy believes in running a man scheme and we're more of a cover two, whatever it may be. I mean, like it's not just we get who we want or we get whoever we deem is the best, best for this draft slot. You have to think about other things. So that's going to be a really interesting marriage, which is going to be happening in a lot of places in college football. This isn't, singular to Oklahoma, but at the same time, I think that's incredibly interesting. And what I do think is interesting is with Oklahoma being so aggressive about this and hiring a guy that has a real NFL pedigree, a real NFL background, who's been around front offices, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they come to in that conversation, George. Like, how do you marry, okay, this is what our coaches want versus this is what our scouts think is best. And again, who can we get? Like, there's a lot of balls in the air to kind of juggle there, and you've got to figure out how you prioritize and what the, you almost have to come up with some sort of formula for it because there's almost too many cooks in the kitchen if you don't have one.
And I think that, I do want to say that I still think Brent Venables and this coaching staff will have a lot of say,
Sure.
If not final say on a lot of these decisions in terms of recruiting, but it's just an interesting, how are they going to do that? But I think that the direction of this is really smart from Oklahoma's perspective because you need these type of people to help you with this. Like, we talked about it on the podcast, but Brent Venables doesn't need to be in the negotiation room, helping with these contracts for every single player, right? Like, I think he can tell you, like, we really got to keep this kid. Like, we got to figure out how to make the money work, whatever. But you need someone managing all 105 players that are going to be on your roster. And you need, scouts that can help, a Jay Valai or a Miguel Chavis or whoever it may be, identifying talent or whatever it is that they need help with. Like, it's just, college football's grown into this massive thing with NIL and portal and recruiting and all of that you need more staff members. And you're seeing that across college football. You're seeing the major programs add more and more, extra personnel to help with this. And I think having somebody like a Jim Nagy who's going to go out and hire people probably with an NFL background and understand scouting, it's just going to help Oklahoma. How that dynamic works behind the scenes, we may never know.
Sure.
But I don't think it's a bad thing.
Isn't it going to be interesting, too, to see, like, just not necessarily like how he acclimates himself to the college level and everything that is changing? And I know that it's kind of almost become a cliche that it's just thrown out there that this is the new NFL. This is the way that everything is moving. But there is still some connections back to the world of what college football is at its core. I'm kind of excited to see how Jim Nagy kind of throws himself into the mix of what this is, of being a college football program, but at the same time playing in the SEC, where I think everybody out there, I'm sure, realizes how far Oklahoma has to go to get back to the top.
And I think one thing about Nagy that I really like, and I don't know how it translates necessarily to running a college football program, but what you saw over the last 7 years running the Senior Bowls, it had tremendous growth, whether that's viewership, getting more talented players there, having new ideas on, whatever it may be to run that game that's become huge. I think that he's done an incredible job of marketing it, and that's where I think he'll be really good for Oklahoma. We've talked a lot about they need to do a better job of promoting, getting people to support the program, donate NIL, all of those things. It feels like Jim Nagy is kind of the perfect person to be that Pied Piper and get people to get involved.
That was going to be my next question to Josh, was just in terms of if Jim Nagy called you right now and, he say he hadn't been watching Oklahoma here over the last couple of years and the troubles that they've been in, the dark times, what would be like the first thing that you say, like, this has to get fixed from a general manager standpoint? I know it's an incredibly broad question.
Yeah, no, it's tough. Guys, honestly, I would say, and you go from staff to staff, I would say it's roster balance, guys. Like, because when you looked at Lincoln, there was so much focus on offense, and that was where all, you look at the 5 stars that came in, they were invariably offensive skill players. Now, I do think, I think the balance is better. There's no question about it to me. But there's also no question that it's been very defensive. Like, there's been a lot of focus there. The David Stones, you just go down the list where Oklahoma has been willing to do that. And I don't have a huge objection to that, but I do think there needs to be some sort of clear picture of, like, okay, this is what we're willing to do here. This is what we're going to do here. And I think there has to be, there already is. I don't want to make it sound like he's got to come in and reinvent the wheel. I just mean, like, I think there will be a better picture of both how to manage evaluations, rosters, doing it on a more timely basis, where sometimes I see Oklahoma making these offers later on and you're like, you're a little late on that, even in the, whether it's the portal, whether it's high school recruiting. I think maybe that can be streamlined a little bit. And again, some of that is just taking stuff off the coach's plate. But I think those things can be really valuable because, again, this is a guy that's had to work in an NFL front office where you're going from school to school to school, on a 1 week trip, and you've got to hit 8 schools in the Midwest or whatever it may be. So I think there is going to be an organization factor that he can bring to some of this that I don't think it's just Oklahoma, that I think often a lot of colleges maybe lack.
I would say to that question, Eddie, is they need to have a higher hit rate on portal players. Sure. It feels like they've missed on quite a few guys in the portal, and I don't know if it's as much of their fault as it is the calendar is so difficult on these coaches. And that's what I meant earlier when I said they got to have more people, working in your, front office or in your program, whatever, because you need people that are working year round on, evaluating players that maybe not even are in the portal, sure, but could possibly be in the portal, and then going and getting them. I thought Kerry made a really interesting point. People are like, oh, maybe this will mean they won't get more Kennesaw State players. I think it means that they might try and go after some of these hidden gems in the portal. Like, that's what Jim Nagy is known for at the Senior Bowl, is finding these players that maybe not everybody knows about in college football, and also getting the superstars to come and play in it, but also finding, Quinn Miners, who was the, guy from, where was it? That's Whitewater in Wisconsin, and now's the starting left guard for the Denver Broncos. Like, no one knew about him before he went to the Senior Bowl, and then he blew up because of a third-round pick. So it's like, that's the kind of stuff that I think Nagy and the rest of the staff, like, you have somebody that is, dedicating their time year-round to looking at the portal or high school ranks and being on top of those things while the coaching staff is worrying during the football season about coaching the actual football games.
No doubt. And this is the point in the program here, and this is as we kind of get to the final end. I do think that, like, as much heat has been turned up on the athletic department, Randall Stevenson included, although he's relatively new to the happenings and the restructuring of the front office or the formation of a front office, Jake Rosenberg, Joe Castiglione, Brent Venables to an extent. This is an incredible win for them. This is a big win for them moving forward. That doesn't mean that expectations or the pressure, it doesn't mean that it's off in 2025. They obviously still have to produce wins at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a long-term thing. This isn't a short-term fix. Does that mean Nagy won't have any effect on what happens next season? No. I think that the spring portal is going to be really interesting to see how he approaches it. But you're right, Eddie. Like, it's still 2025 season still largely depends on Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer.
100%. And we'll find out about those guys here in about a week's time as spring football gets underway. We'll have continued coverage of Jim Nagy and the hire and everything that goes into it. Hopefully we'll hear from Jim Nagy at some point in the coming days. Maybe
I
next
bet we
week
do
before we start spring ball.
Yeah.
That'll be a lot of fun to kind of get a little bit of a better idea and kind of get more of his thoughts on how he sees this entire front office coming together, because as we said, he's going to maybe be the point man when it comes to everything.
Yeah,
my final word, maybe.
Yeah,
he is.
Yeah, my final word is he is. He is going to be leading the search for the rest of these front office personnel members.
For the first time in a long time, some good news to talk about here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel. Make sure that you hit up, the Unofficial 40. That will be up here on the webpage, and obviously all of your podcast listening platforms here in the coming hours. So that's going to do it. Jim Nagy named Oklahoma's general manager. Thank you to Josh. Thank you to George. And, of course, thank you to myself. This thing wouldn't happen without me. How about that? We will talk to you next time here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel.